You buy a brand new house because you don't want problems. No old roof, no aging air conditioner, no previous homeowner's questionable renovation. Everything is new, but right now, one of the biggest home builders in America is being sued over more than 500 Florida homes where homeowners say the roofs need to be replaced and homes have suffered water intrusion and mold. Another major builder is facing more than 300 Florida homeowners over allegedly defective drainage. And these aren't 20-year-old houses. Some were built as recently as 2024. Now, that doesn't mean that every new construction home is bad. In fact, I think that new construction can be one of the smartest ways to buy a home in Florida. But there are 5 traps that need to be understood before walking into the sales center. One involves the house itself. Another is buried in the contract. One can change your monthly payment after you've already moved in, and another can cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the time that you own the home. And the last one can make your house surprisingly difficult to sell. Let's start with the assumption that almost everybody makes. Trap number 1, new doesn't mean built right. In fairness to builders, most new homes are fine. Builders construct thousands of homes every year, and they'll tell you that serious defect claims represent a very small percentage of what they actually build. They'll also point out that many new construction problems ultimately come down to an individual subcontractor. That's fair, but here's the problem. Florida has been building homes at an incredible pace, and when you're trying to build thousands of homes using dozens of subcontractors while also dealing with labor shortages and closing deadlines, quality control matters. The 2 cases that I mentioned earlier are good examples. The Seminole tribe of Florida has sued Lennar over more than 500 homes that the tribe roughly paid $300 million to build. The allegations include roof problems, water intrusion, and mold. Another case involving more than 300 Florida homeowners allegedly defective drainage in homes built by D.R. Horton. Lennar and D.R. Horton are 2 of the largest builders in America. Again, these are allegations being litigated. They don't mean that every home these companies build have problems, but they illustrate something buyers need to understand. New doesn't mean perfect. And there's another reason that this matters in Florida. The amount of time that you have to bring certain construction defect claims is shorter than it used to be. Florida's statute of repose was reduced from 10 years to 7. Generally speaking, the clock is tied to completion of the home, not simply the day you eventually discover the problem. So imagine you buy a brand new house. Everything looks great. Then, years later, you discover a serious hidden construction defect. Depending on the circumstances, you may already be outside of the time allowed to bring certain claims. Florida also has a process under Chapter 558 that generally requires owners to notify responsible parties of alleged construction defects to give them an opportunity to inspect and resolve the issue before litigation. That's why I would never solely rely on the builder municipal inspections or the fact that the home is brand new. Some of the best money that you can spend is hiring your own independent inspector, ideally once during construction before the drywall goes up and again before closing. Because once the drywall is installed, a lot of the house disappears. Plumbing, electrical, framing, HVAC connections, waterproofing details. You want another set of eyes on that house before those things are covered up. A few $100s for an inspection on a several $100,000 or $1 million purchase is cheap insurance. If you're looking at a specific community here in Palm Beach County and you need a good inspector, I'm happy to connect you with one. My contact information, as always, is listed below. The physical house is only the first thing I'd inspect, because when you buy new construction, there's another major difference that most buyers don't even realize until they're sitting in the sales center. Trap number 2, you're signing the builder's contract. When you buy a typical resale home here in Florida, you're generally using a standardized real estate contract. When you buy directly from a builder, you're usually signing their contract, and that's an important distinction. The builder paid an attorney to draft the agreement to protect the builder. It doesn't automatically make it unfair, but you need to understand that the protections and the flexibility that you might normally expect in a resale transaction may not exist in the same way. For example, the builder contract may give the builder significant flexibility over construction timelines. Your home might be expected in March, then June, then September. Depending on the contract, your ability to walk away because of that delay may be extremely limited. The agreement may give the builder some ability to substitute materials, finishes, appliances, or other components when the originally specified product isn't available. Your deposit can also become become non-refundable at certain stages, and financing can become another issue. Imagine signing a contract on a home that's going to take a year or more to complete. By the time you close, interest rates have changed, your financial situation may have changed, or the appraisal comes in below your contract price. Whether you can terminate, recover your deposit, or have to come up with additional cash depends heavily on the contract you sign. And this becomes even more important with pre-construction condos, where sometimes you're signing contracts years before the building is finished. This is why I tell buyers, don't treat the builder contract like paperwork. It's part of the deal. Understand your deposit, understand when it becomes non-refundable, understand your financing obligations, and understand the builder's rights to delay construction or make substitutions, and understand exactly what rights you have if something changes. When considering a purchase, have a Florida real estate attorney review the agreement. It is money very well spent. And here's something else that's important. If you're going to use a real estate agent, involve them before you walk into the sales center to register with the builder. Builder policies vary, but in many communities, if you register yourself first, it can affect whether the agent can represent you in the transaction. The sales representative sitting in the model home works for the builder. Your agent works for you. And while we're talking about the sales center, there's another number that you need to be careful with: the monthly payment. Because the payment that you're showing when you buy the house may not be the payment that you're making a couple of years later. Trap number 3 is your first tax bill is not necessarily your real tax bill. This catches a lot of relocating buyers every year. When you buy a brand new home, there may not have been a completed house on the property for the county to assess during the previous tax year. So the taxes associated with the property can look surprisingly low. Maybe you're looking at the tax history online. Maybe you're looking at an estimate. Maybe it's incorporated into the initial escrow calculation and everything looks affordable. But then the property gets reassessed with the completed home. Now you're no longer paying taxes based on primarily a vacant lot or an incomplete property. You're paying taxes based on the value of the finished house. This can be a very different number, and Florida's Save Our Home protection doesn't prevent the initial reset. Once you've established homestead and qualify for Save Our Homes, it can limit annual increases in the assessed value of your homesteaded property. But first, the property has to establish that a new assessed value. I've seen buyers get caught by this. Nothing about the mortgage changed and nothing happened to the house itself, but the escrow payment increases because the tax bill finally caught up to the value of the completed property. So when I'm helping someone evaluate new construction, I don't want to know what the taxes were last year. I want to know what the taxes should look like once the house is fully assessed. That's the number that you should build into your monthly budget. Your first tax bill isn't necessarily your tax bill. And before you think that you've calculated the real carry cost, there's another line item that you need to look for. Because in a lot of Florida's new communities, 3 letters can add another few $100s a month. Trap number 4 is the CDD. And CDD stands for Community Development District. And if you're moving to Florida from another state, there's a good chance that you've never heard of one. Here's the simple version. When a developer builds a large master plan community, somebody has to pay for the infrastructure. The roads, the drainage, the lakes, the utilities, the landscaping, amenity centers, sometimes resort-style pools, clubhouses, and other community improvements. One way that infrastructure gets financed is through bonds associated with a community development district, and homeowners within a district help repay those obligations through assessments. Those assessments commonly appear on the property tax bill. So you may have your mortgage, your property taxes, and your homeowner's insurance, your HOA, and then you'll have your CDD assessment. Depending on the community, that can mean thousands of dollars per year. Let's say it's $3,000. That's another $250 a month. Over 20 years, that's $60,000. Now, that doesn't mean that a CDD is bad. You're getting something for that money. It's part of why many of these communities have beautiful roads, landscaping, lakes, clubhouses, and amenities. But it absolutely belongs in the price of the house in your head, because there's a big difference between qualifying for the mortgage and comfortably affording the total carrying costs. And there's another distinction that buyers should understand. CDD assessments can contain different components. The bond-related portion may eventually be paid off, but the ongoing operations, maintenance portion may continue forward. So before buying, ask for the CDD disclosure. Find out what the annual assessment is. Find out what portion relates to debt, and find out how much debt remains. And find out whether that debt can be paid off early. Then calculate the number that actually matters. So mortgage, insurance, taxes, HOA, CDD. That's your real monthly payment. Okay, so now we've talked about the house, we've talked about the contract, and we figured out what it actually costs to own. But there's one more number that almost nobody thinks about while they're walking through the model home. What happens when you try to sell it? Trap number 5, the builder can become your competition. This one's incredibly incredibly important if there's any chance that you may move again within the next few years. Builders have something that individual homeowners don't, an incentive budget. They can offer closing cost credits, mortgage rate buydowns, design center credits, lot premium incentives, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in concessions. And here's why that matters. Builders don't generally want to slash the recorded base price of every home if they can avoid it, because recorded sales affect the future comps, appraisals, and pricing throughout the community. So instead, they may protect the headline price while giving the buyer incentives somewhere else. That can be fantastic when you're on the buy side, but then 3 years later, it can become a problem. Picture this, you bought the home for $700,000. You spent another $40,000 making it exactly how you wanted it. Now, we're 3 years down the road and you need to move. You list your house for $750,000, but 3 doors down, the builder is still selling the exact same floor plan, except theirs is brand new. Nobody's lived in it, and they're offering the next buyer a $40,000 or $50,000 incentive package. Now ask yourself, which house does that buyer choose? That's the resale trap. When the builder is still building, they're not just your developer, they're your future competition. And unlike you, they can use financing incentives and corporate margins to move inventory. This is why I'm much more cautious about buying new construction if you think there's a meaningful chance that you'll sell again in the next 3 to 4 years. It doesn't mean that you can't make money, and it doesn't mean that the house won't appreciate, but you're entering into a resale market where your biggest competitor will be selling a newer version of your house. That's why I always like to buy later in the build out. Once the community is more mature and the builder is nearly sold out, that dynamic starts to disappear. And there's one more thing that I'd watch when choosing the home itself. Don't assume that every dollar you spend at the design center adds a dollar of value to the house. It doesn't. If I'm spending builder money, I want to prioritize things that are difficult or impossible to change later. The lot, the ceiling height, structural options, garage space, impact glass. I'm much less concerned about paying a huge builder markup for cosmetic finishes that I could change later. So don't compare the advertised base price to resale. Compare the house that you're actually buying after the lot premium and upgrades to resale, because that's your real investment. Okay, so after all of that, would I buy new construction in Florida? Absolutely. In the right situation, I actually prefer it. I'm Joel Poulin, and my goal is simple, to help you know more so that you can move better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.